La Liga president Javier Tebas claims he would support the player if he decided to walk off the pitch in the future. Well, in a news conference which lasted over an hour, Tebas said he loved the Brazilian and wanted him to stay in Spain.
If he feels affected, of course, I would encourage him to just leave the pitch. If he feels bad and he feels that the people are against him, his honor, well, he and the whole team could abandon the pitch. But that is a decision of the referee. He has to, see what should be done at the particular time. And I would encourage him to leave the pitch. And he will be supported by me personally and by La Liga. Vinicius is a great player, and we love him. And I really would like him to stay to play here in Spain.
What a difference a day makes. Our senior reporter, Rob Dorset, listened to the whole news conference and, as you can see, joins us now. Rob, Tebas issued an apology yesterday, but markedly, it wasn't actually aimed at Vinicius. So what else has he had to say today?
Mike, this was an extraordinary news conference. 86 minutes, Javier Tebas, the La Liga president, spoke for. Answered all of the questions very openly, you have to say. But my interpretation was that some of those answers were embarrassing. Some of them seemed horribly out of touch. And of course, there are cultural differences here. There are potentially differences and language barriers as well. Maybe there are. But I think this felt like Javier Tebas trying to backpedal and make amends for those hugely damaging comments he made towards Vinicius Jr, where he diminished his experience of racism and apologised for that. He repeated that apology again today. There were one or two really uncomfortable moments where Tebas talked of the racist comments he'd heard in stadiums of the past, and he almost mimicked that language. He used one specific word, which I won't repeat here, which was grossly offensive. And it was a really difficult watch for the vast majority of that 86 minutes. And I think what sums it up is just before that news conference, La Liga issued a dossier to all the media that were attending it. And there was media from America, from Asia, from Africa, from all over Europe as well. A dossier which they felt justified the work they've been doing to try and tackle racism in Spain. And I'll give you one example. They spoke of more than a dozen cases of racism that they'd investigated in the last 8 years. That's fewer than 2 a year, cases of racism that they've investigated. And they extolled that as though it was a virtue. And that was quite frankly embarrassing to hear that. Let me give you some of the other headlines. He said that Vinicius Jr is the best player in the whole of Liga. He expects him to go on to win the Ballon d'Or, and he thinks that's why he is subjected to so much racist abuse and why he gets more racist abuse than perhaps other black players in Spain. Javier Tebas was asked directly whether he'd spoken to Vinicius since the criticism. No, he said, but he was happy to do so once things were a little bit more calm. He said, incredibly, he feels he can solve the problem of racism in Spain within months, quote, if La Liga is given the powers to crack down on it. And this was a theme he went back to over and over again. He was saying that La Liga investigates cases of racism. They then have to pass it on to the Spanish judiciary. And Javier Tebas was passing the ball, passing the buck, in some people's eyes, very much to the Spanish judiciary, saying they are not taking strong enough action on the cases that we hand to them. Have a listen to the La Liga president once again.
We will legally still fight and take these people to court so that they're sentenced and they go to prison for anybody who utters these insulting comments. And what we do want is actually the power to do more things, because if we have the power to do this, we are convinced that within months this would be solved.
Rob, the reason we're hearing from Tebas is because this has caused a real storm. So how has Spanish football been affected since the racism of last weekend?
Well, it's had criticism from all over the world, Mike, hasn't it? From some very high-profile figures in football as well. The England manager, I was speaking to about it yesterday, and he said he felt this was a watershed moment, that these incidents against Vinicius Jr were so serious that the whole of the world seemed to have woken up and decided they wanted change as a result of it. Tebas was asked if he thinks black players would be dissuaded from joining Spanish football and making transfers over to La Liga. And he said he hopes not, but he did admit that this has been a very damaging set of circumstances for La Liga's reputation on the world stage. And you couldn't help feeling that there was a commercial aspect to this news conference today, that Tebas was speaking as much to try and reassure his sponsors and the commercial backers of La Liga as much as he was the players like Vinicius Jr. And he admitted that. He said he'd spoken directly to the sponsors to make it clear that they are trying to alleviate some of their concerns. Again, have a listen to Tebas on that.
If I weren't concerned, I'd be crazy not to be concerned. Of course I'm concerned, and we will work to try and find a solution to turn this image around, because Spanish football is not racist. La Liga has worked and will continue to work against this behavior of xenophobic and racist comments in stadiums. We've got to get our act together and recover that reputation that we may have lost. We think it doesn't reflect reality. And if we truly believe in what we believe in, fighting is not necessarily easier, but it's something that comes naturally to us. And we're going to certainly continue in the fight.
Now, perhaps the most extraordinary comments from Javier Tebas came after 80 minutes, just towards the end of the news conference. And I really want you to listen to this, because I think this sums up the news conference more than anything else that the La Liga president said in that previous hour and a half or so. I don't think it's wrong to say that his response to this question was absolutely staggering. And really speaks volumes about what's going on in La Liga right now. Javier Tebas was asked directly about how many black people work in La Liga. Have a listen.
We don't count them, to tell you the truth, because if we did count them, then that would be bad. But as I travel in Angola, we have a black person. But as I said, I don't count them. In the digital department, I've seen certain black people. As I said, I don't count them. Yes, there are. We don't count them one by one. But the question is unusual. I can't believe that people, do I know the statistics of how many, I know it by gender. How many black people have we got? Well, I don't know, but we have Asians that work for us too. So, if I did start counting the black people, then I would be racist.
I honestly don't know what to make of that. I mean, at a time when organizations all over the world are trying to look at their diversity and make their workplace much more diverse, the fact that Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, could react to a question like that, laughing about it and say that he has absolutely no idea how many black people work for La Liga, I think is quite an extraordinary statement right at the end of that news conference. And as I say, it was an extraordinary news conference from start to finish. We wait to see if Vinicius Jr reacts to that news conference on Twitter. He's been doing a lot of that in recent times, hasn't he? Or other black players in La Liga. I wonder when they see what we've seen right now, how they will react to what the most powerful man in Spanish football has had to say today.